Special thanks to Horizon Therapeutics for sponsoring the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast, working tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics' mission at horizontherapeutics.com.
I responded to a call of shots fired where an offender was firing out his back window at the passing L train. He was shooting at the trains going by. During that call, we tried to gain entry into his property. The offender opened the door. He had fired 2 shots, and one struck me in the right cheek, and I was a instant ventilator-dependent quadriplegic.
That's our guest this week, Jim Mullen, a former Chicago police officer who was shot and injured in the line of duty. We'll hear how Jim's life has changed, how his injury has affected him, and how he has started marketing and selling his mother's applesauce, now available at Amazon, Walmart, and other national retailers. It's a fascinating story and one you'll hear on this Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Say hello now to host David Hirsch.
Hi, and thanks for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, Fathers Mentoring Fathers of Children with Special Needs, presented by the Special Fathers Network.
The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we'd be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad.
Now let's hear this fascinating conversation between Jim Mullen and David Hirsch.
I'm thrilled to be talking today with my longtime friend, Jim Mullen of Chicago, who's the father of one adult daughter, a food company entrepreneur, and a disabled Chicago police officer who was catastrophically injured in the line of duty and is a ventilator-dependent quadriplegic. Jim, thank you for taking the time to do a podcast interview for the Special Fathers Network.
Oh, thank you, David. It's a pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity.
You and your wife, Athena, have been married for 29 years and are the proud parents of Maggie, who's 25. Let's start with some background. Where did you grow up? Tell me something about your family.
Well, I've always grown up in Chicago. Originally, I lived near Hamlin Park, which is basically Belmont, Damon area. And then eventually I moved out further west with my parents to their other home, and I've lived in the Forest Glen, Sauganash area for basically most of my life since I've been about 8 years old.
So did you have any siblings growing up?
I did. I have one sister, Patricia, and we're close, and she's 5 years older than I am, and we get along pretty well most of the time.
Good to hear. Thank you. So out of curiosity, what does your dad do for a living? What's his background?
Well, my dad was also a Chicago police officer. He was a retired police sergeant. He actually joined the department right after World War II. In 1946, he came out of the job.
And did he have any other work experience other than as a Chicago police officer, or was that his entire work experience?
No, he originally he was a heavy equipment operator or machine remover, and beforehand he actually had been working at Stagg Field down by the University of Chicago, and he didn't realize it at the time, but he was actually setting up some of the equipment that they were using for the atomic bomb.
That's pretty dramatic, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was a difficult time for everybody back then, I'm sure.
Well, my recollection was, just based on your age, your dad's age, that he grew up during the Depression.
That's true. He did. He was born in 1922, and he had a pretty rough life. You know, nobody wanted an extra mouth to feed during the Depression, and he bounced around from a couple different families. His parents had some challenges, so it wasn't so much of a nuclear family back in the day. So he moved around with different families. He, had run away a few times. So my dad did not have an easy road whatsoever.
I do remember you telling me something about a Rin Tin Tin dog story in his youth.
Oh yeah. So when my dad was growing up, he grew up here, like more Lincoln Park area. He lived in an apartment on Clark Street, and he used to play with this dog that he referred to as Rin Tin Tin. Later, I had come to find out that the dog was actually the sole survivor from the St. Valentine Day massacre. So my dad lived during a wild time, boy, back in those days.
Yeah, two brushes with history there, with the atomic bomb in World War II, and then with the St. Valentine's Day massacre. Thanks for sharing. So I'm sort of curious to know, how would you describe your relationship with your dad?
I would describe it, I would say, when you're growing up as a kid, it's sometimes challenging. I mean, he was a great dad. He took me fishing. I was never wanting for much of anything, but he also had a pretty volatile temper, and so that certainly strained our relationships over the years. But that's why I guess you have to have dads, because otherwise kids can run amok and do things that they're not supposed to do. So basically, he was a great dad, and we had a great relationship. Even more so, we got closer over the years, and especially after I got hurt, I owe him my life. He really watched over me when I was, after I had suffered this gunshot injury, and was, by my side every day, along with my wife and my mom and my sister and everybody else in my life.
That's fabulous. So my recollection was that you went to Northeastern Illinois University, you had a degree in economics, and that early in your career you worked in electrical sales.
Correct.
What was it that motivated you to go from that type of work into the Chicago Police Department?
Well, I started working for a company called F&G Electric. My best friend's father had owned the company, and it was warehouse work. I was a big guy, and so we were moving all kinds of conduit around and wire, and so I started there when I was 16 years old, and then I obviously worked my way when I was going to school, went through school and kept my job, and I was getting along okay. I mean, I didn't see a super bright future there for me. I wasn't making a lot of money at the time, and the police department was in our family. My sister was married to a police officer. My dad was a retired Chicago police sergeant, and it was a good job, a good pay, and I think I've always been kind of destined to that career just because of my interaction with family and friends of my father's over the years that we met with, and I was, kind of a natural for getting into it.
So my recollection was that Athena, your wife, actually joined the Chicago Police Department 3 years before you did.
Correct. That is true. She's the older woman in my life, and she joined about a year and a half before me, and she had a very great career herself, and really we've been blessed, by our careers. I mean, I was very happy. I miss my job every day. It's unfortunate that I can't do what I used to do. I was really pretty good at it, but some things in life change, and you just have to roll with those changes.
So were you married before you each started at the Chicago Police Department, or did you meet through the Chicago Police Department?
No, we met at work. So I joined, by the time I got shipped out to a district, it was, I believe, late May or early June of 91, maybe, or 90. It had to be 90, I bet. And then I just happened to see her in the hallway, and she caught my eye. And at one point, one of my field training officers introduced us, and so one day we just happened to go out on a date, and that's where it all started for us.
and the rest is history, as if you will.
We had a good thing going, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. So I'm sort of curious to know, prior to your catastrophic injury, did you have any exposure to disability or special needs in your family?
No, not really. No, not that I can think of. Through the police department, though, being in the 24th district, I did have some exposure there because Misericordia is located at Devon and Ridge, which is within our district. So I spent quite a bit of time in that particular area, or anytime they needed help with anything, and they had fundraisers. And so I mean, that was basically my brush with people that had Down syndrome. Currently, I have two friends that both have Down children, kids, and they're wonderful children. So that was my previous experience with people with disabilities.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing. So what were the circumstances that led up to this fateful situation that you find yourself in? What was the nature of the call that you were on, and what transpired?
Well, I was working in the 24th district on what we refer to as a TAC team, or a plainclothes team. And one of the calls that we respond to a lot of different calls, but especially emergency calls, like a shots fired call or a person shot, is a pretty extreme emergency, especially for our TAC team. And I responded to a call of shots fired where an offender was firing out his back window at the passing L train, or subway as other people might know it. Ours is elevated. And he was shooting at the trains going by. And during that call, we tried to gain entry into his property, which didn't happen at that time. So as we regrouped and pulled back, the offender opened the door. He had fired 2 shots, and one struck me in the right cheek, and I was a instant ventilator dependent quadriplegic.
Yikes. Well, do you remember a lot from that day, or did you black out and then sort of come to your senses in the hospital? What was it like?
No, I still don't remember much of anything from that. I don't remember anything from the day, and the injury itself has certainly caused me to suffer memory issues, even going back further. So I have a short-term memory issue. I also have a bit of a facial recognition issue. But, I'm making do and doing the best I can with the situation, because when my one partner showed up on the scene, he saw me laying there. He thought he was going to help me get up, like, "Hey, Moon, get up." And I was laying there, and he said I was laying there in just one little hole in my cheek and a halo of blood behind me. And, we started CPR right away and started working on me right away. Unfortunately, the fire department was just several blocks away, so when they got the call, they were pretty quick getting there, and I was intubated right on the scene. And quick actions like that, you never really expect to be in a situation like that. And everybody, your partners you have so much fun with, and you don't expect them to respond in an emergency situation, because you're, at least an emergency medical situation like that. But they did what they could for me, and I owe them a great deal of gratitude. That's why I'm still here today.
Yeah, it is really remarkable to sustain an injury like you described. I'm sort of curious to know what the recovery process was like, and how long did it take?
Well, the first hospital they took me to right away was St. Francis in Evanston, and it's almost like they took me there to see what happens, to see if I was going to live or die, because I mean, they didn't know at the time what to expect. And then the next day, we transported me down to Northwestern ICU, and that's when they all started working on me and really started proactively trying to keep me alive, and started making plans for me at that point in time.
So do you have any recollection for how long you were in the ICU or at the hospital for that matter?
I really don't have a lot of memories. I know that they took me lights and sirens from Evanston down to Northwestern. They blocked I thought that was nice of them. They blocked every intersection going from Evanston all the way downtown into Chicago and got me down there and stable. I woke up, I was under sedation in the ICU. I do remember waking up and they have what they call a spell board because when I woke up, my jaw was wired shut and I was on a ventilator, so I wasn't able to speak at all or communicate. So the only thing I could do was blink. Now, David, I have a bit of a sense of humor, but at that point in time, they were trying to communicate with me, and the first words that I spelled was cheap seats, and they couldn't figure it out because they had me by the door where everybody kept coming in and out, waking me up and everything else.
Oh, it's amazing that you could maintain your sense of humor in that dire situation that you described. But it's testimony to your will to live and just the character of your personality.
And one other thing, my dad, I spent almost I was there from October until almost December, and then late December, and then they started transferring me over to the Rehab Institute of Chicago, and unfortunately, I had suffered a few setbacks, so I used to go from the Rehab Institute back to ICU, and I did that a few times because I had suffered a heart attack and had some other medical complications. But overall, I was just about getting a little bit more, starting to become more stable in January, and that's where I was spending most of my time in the rehab hospital.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. It doesn't sound like it was a straight line as far as your recovery. It sounds like, at some level, and I don't mean to trivialize it, by saying 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards, or maybe 2 steps backwards, 1 step forward. It sounded very precarious. But thinking back on it, you were married for a few years. You had just had a daughter less than 7 months before your catastrophic injury. I'm wondering what some of the fears going through your mind were as a young husband, a young parent for that matter.
Well, it's kind of funny that you asked that particular question. People ask me during that time if I was afraid, and quite frankly, I really wasn't. I never had the feeling or thought that I ever, I just never thought I was going to die, nor was I afraid of dying at the time. I just thought, hey, today's another day, and we're going to swing the bat and keep going, and I didn't really realize the gravity, perhaps, of the situation because of the drugs they might have been giving me, or who knows what. But I never really had to think like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the end of everything. I never had that. It was very unfortunate that I had a roommate at the time when I was at the Rehab Institute, and unfortunately, that gentleman, he was in an ambulance and sustained a similar type spinal cord type injury during an accident, and unfortunately, Frank didn't make it, which is unfortunate. But I never had that fear or issue. I still don't. I don't know why. I mean, I know I'm kind of precarious. I know I'm very stable now, but let's face it, I'm still breathing out of a scuba tube here, and it's held on by a rubber band. So I don't know. I just, maybe I'm at peace with something like that. And, the other good thing is, the one thing with being in the police department is, we certainly rally to support our own. And I knew that, God forbid, if I did die, that, they were going to be able to take care of my wife and daughter. It's a pretty amazing insurance policy that most people that get up every day and walk out the door don't have.
Yeah, well, that sense of family, the community being part of the Chicago Police Department is what I heard you talking about. And, I'm wondering, was there some meaningful advice you got along the way that has helped you put your situation into perspective?
Well, you know what, during my time in the rehab institute, I received two visitors. Well, I received quite a few visitors, more than just two, but two special visitors. There was a disabled detective from New York that came out to see me. His name escapes me right at this minute, along with a priest by the name of Father Mike. And unfortunately, both those gentlemen are now deceased, but it was nice to see. It was, they were just letting me know that there's, I'm going to be okay, and you're going to come through this, and life will still go on, and you'll be okay. And I've been very blessed. I've had, and this is going to sound maybe a little strange to some people. I mean, I'm not overly religious, but I know there have been a lot of people out there praying for me. So I'm just thinking that perhaps some words got through or something, because for me to be in this situation, I'm very lucky to have survived as long as I have.
Yeah, well, you've got something going. You haven't met your destiny yet. And I've known you for the better part of 2 decades, and I've never heard you complain. I've never heard you have a pity party for yourself. I know that it's not easy to do some of the things that you've had to endure. And at the risk of focusing on the negative, I'm wondering what some of the biggest challenges you've encountered are, perhaps first as a husband and then as a father.
Yeah, that's a tough question. There's a lot. I've never been able to, ever since that day, I've never been able to hug my child or hold my kid or my wife, which, is difficult, to say the least. I would say just everyday survival. Nobody knows how to be disabled. It's a learning process. It's almost like a part-time job. You don't know, every day's a little different. It takes me hours to get ready. I get a certain level of frustration. Some days that can be challenging. I'm trying to be more realistic with people. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I certainly do have my bad days. I try to limit those, but over the years, I've had quite a few that have been a little bit more challenging than others. But for the most part, I've tried to make the best of, what has been a very difficult situation. But we've learned to live with it. I have great medical care. I have great people around me that have basically done whatever they can to keep me as healthy as I can, and to allow me to do any crazy thing that I decide to get out of the house, or, start doing some things that maybe most people would say you got to be crazy. But, I have a certain zest for living, and I like keeping that particular zest for living. And I still have dreams. I mean, a lot of things that affect me, especially now as I'm starting to get older and see my life, that I'm not going to attain certain things that I thought I was always going to do or wanted to. Traveling is a bit of an issue, so I don't travel as well. Just having, people in your house 24 hours a day, as close as I am to these people, it's still different. But for the most part, like they say, when life gives you lemons, make applesauce.
Well, we're going to get to that in a moment.
Oh, that's okay.
Do you think there is a turning point, as far as trying to put your disability into perspective and find your groove, if you will, your ability to communicate so effectively like you can now? Was it difficult at the beginning? Or are there some turning points that you can look back and maybe connect some of the dots now?
I think technology's played a really big role for me. I use a program called Dragon, Naturally Speaking, and that's how we're communicating today. The computer age and the computers have helped my life to communicate and entertain myself a great deal. Medical equipment itself has made a big difference. There's a machine here called a cough assist machine. So if anybody out there knows anyone that's on a ventilator, I don't suction. That's a very awkward, painful, challenging thing to have to do all the time. But I have a machine called a cough assist that's really increased the quality of my life, and that's one thing I give credit to. My sister and my mom just happened to be reading the paper about a Mr. Emerson and learned about that cough assist machine, and that thing's really changed my life. It gives me a lot more freedom and flexibility to get out and do things. So, I mean, as far as being paralyzed from the neck down and being on a ventilator, I have a very, very high quality of life. So, I mean, it certainly, I'm able to eat anything that I want. I can't drink anymore, and that's one thing I will tell you I do miss having a few pops. Because, being of Irish descent, I can't help myself. And, being an old Irish cop, I still would love to have a few beverages, and it certainly would help the stress levels and relaxation levels a little bit. But unfortunately, God said, nope, you're going to live this ride sober. So, that's what it's been, and that makes it a little bit more challenging, but we're doing the best we can.
Well, thanks for sharing. I'm sort of curious to know what impact your disability has had on your marriage and then on your daughter.
Let's just say it's been more than challenging, and it's not something I would wish on anybody. But my wife is still here, and like I said the other time, making lemonade some days. But it's obviously challenging. It's more challenging for me since I can't do for her a lot of things that I would do. I have to count on a lot of other people, and it's hard when you're a person that does everything yourself, or you're used to running the show, or you're used to being in charge. It's not an easy position to be in when you can't control some things, like doing things I would I see other couples and families traveling, and I would love to show part of the world to my wife and daughter that they haven't seen, and it's just hasn't been in the cards for me to do that.
Yeah, well, thanks for your authenticity. I really appreciate that. So I'm thinking about supporting organizations, Jim. You already made reference to one, the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, now known as the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab,
Yep.
which is a state-of-the-art facility that happens to be here in our backyard in the Chicago area, which has transformed the lives of thousands, tens of thousands of people that have been injured from the time of birth or as a result of an accident of some type like your own. And I'm wondering what other organizations come to mind. I know that there's the 100 Club, which was the first one that came to mind, but you reminded me that that organization benefits a lot of individuals, first responders, but not so much for people in your situation, from what I remember.
Correct. The 100 Club, which is an outstanding organization, helps first responders that have been killed in the line of duty. So it helps those families and pays for college for kids. But there's another organization out there, the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation, which started after I was injured, but has been invaluable to my family and myself, my daughter, paying for school, helping us with bills and expenses if we have them. And they always want to come out and visit, and they never forget. They want you to know that you're always part of the team, and they keep their word. They come out and remember your birthday, and they remember Christmas, and they bring you some gifts. They're just such a wonderful organization, and that's where I like to, if there's anybody out there, that's one of my charities of choice, is that I love to donate to the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation, because they just do such great work for all Chicago police officers.
Yeah, well, let's give a special shout out to former Superintendent Phil Klein, who was the brains behind creating the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation, because it is a transformative organization, and I was proud to serve on an advisory board for a dozen years.
Well, thank you for doing that, David. I know you did that out of friendship, and I appreciate your efforts there as well.
Yeah, well, I have so much respect not only for you, but for Superintendent Klein and the other individuals, some of which are officers or family members of officers, for doing the work they do. It's really meaningful, right? And there's a little overlap, obviously, between the 100 Club and the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation, because the 100 Club does support, like you say, families of the fallen police, Chicago police officers, but it doesn't really account for what happens to all the other circumstances when somebody is injured or catastrophically injured like yourself. That's just not the mission of the 100 Club. And while it does amazing work, I think the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation really fills a really important gap or meets an unmet need in the community. It was the vision of Phil Klein that, we needed to do something on behalf of families like yours and so many others. So,
God bless them, right?
Yep. So let's talk about some of your interests and other experiences. My recollection was that you worked for CBS.
That's true.
What was that about?
That's true. How crazy is that? I am probably the only ventilator-dependent quadriplegic that worked for a national broadcasting company. There's a gentleman I had met by the name of Joe Ahern. He was a great guy, still is a great guy. He is the general manager of CBS, and he thought that I would be great as a disability reporter at bringing stories of people like myself and other disabled people to the forefront. And he gave me that opportunity. I used to broadcast live once a month. I love doing the stories and sharing successes of people like myself that are physically challenged. And it was terrifying, though, I will tell you that. And I stressed every time I did it. I was not a happy camper being on TV, but I did it. It was an experience. I met some super nice people. It was a lovely career when it happened. It was really great.
You usually think of a library as a place to be very, very quiet.
Right, but CBS 2 Disabilities reporter Jim Mullen recently paid a visit to one library where adults want to hear learning and laughter.
Everybody put your hands on your nose.
At the Skokie Public Library, kids are encouraged not to be quiet.
What we want people to know is it's a lively place.
Jim joins us now, and what are some of the plans for the future for the library?
Well, they'd like to see more people get involved with the program there, but they'd really like to see more libraries get involved in the area so they can have programs all around the area.
They've made it that much easier. They have a model now.
The cool thing is libraries aren't quiet anymore.
Right, exactly. That's right.
Thank you, Jim.
That was a milestone to have someone like myself on live TV.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say, just to have some fun, because Joe Ahern's been a good friend for a long time as well, is what do Jim Mullen and Oprah Winfrey have in common? Because Oprah Winfrey got her start on CBS when Joe Ahern was the general manager way back when.
Right.
I think Joe is a visionary, and he helped create a lot of opportunities for a lot of talented individuals, including you and Oprah and so many others.
Well, I think Oprah did a little better than I did, though.
Her career took a little bit different turn than your own.
Yes.
We'll be back with more of the conversation on the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast in just a few moments. But first, this quick message. Please help 21st century dads gather research on families raising children with special needs by having them complete the Special Fathers Network Early Intervention Parents Survey. A link to the survey can be found in the show notes. As a token of our appreciation, each person, mom or dad, who completes the survey will receive a Great Dad coin. Thank you. Now, back to the conversation.
Well, let's switch gears. I know one of our mutual passions are cars, and in your case, vintage automobiles. And I'm wondering, where did that start and how has it evolved over the years?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I've always been a car nut. I don't know where it comes from. My dad had Oldsmobiles in the beginning, then he moved into Cadillacs, and I've always been a car guy. I don't know if it's the freedom. I just, I would love to drive. I could unfortunately I can't drive right now, but if I could, I'd jump in a car right now and drive to Florida. I just love to drive that much. I could be on the road for 12, 15 hours at a time. So maybe I missed my calling. I just have always had a passion for them. And so even when I got injured, I had a 1968 Corvette 427 4-speed convertible. And boy, I love that car. And after my injury, we basically sold a lot of things because they weren't sure how long I was going to survive. But once I knew things were a little better, I got a 79 Z28. That was the car I used to have in high school. I tried that out for a while. And then I got into Oldsmobiles, convertibles. I love 442 convertibles. I've had a bunch of those over the years. And what we do is we put a net underneath my body here in my wheelchair. I have a bar and a lift system in the garage. And what we do is we lift me out of my wheelchair and we drop me in the passenger seat of a classic car or convertible. I can't use a hardtop. And I like to refer to those as my summer wheelchairs because four wheels are four wheels as far as I'm concerned. And so I still got a couple cars. I look for cars every day. I am just a car nut. I can't help myself. And I don't know what I'll be getting this spring, but I'm sure it's going to be something very sexy and exotic.
So when you say you look every day, that's online, right?
Correct. Yes, that's true.
And you've bought and sold quite a few cars over the years, even since your disability.
Yes, I would say probably 40 or 50 cars over the years.
Yeah. Have you ever been out to the Volo Auto Museum?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I've sold a few things there. I've looked around there. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that's a fun place to go for anybody that has an interest in vintage cars. It's a trip down memory lane in certain respects.
Yeah, I still have a couple right now. I still have one blue 442, and I have a joint venture with my sister because I couldn't afford it myself, but I happened to come across a couple of years ago a 1959 Cadillac convertible. I mean, that's like the top of the car collecting world as far as I was concerned, and I would drive that around. I drove that around for a couple summers. It was a lot of fun, although very terrifying, I must tell you, because you're so paranoid somebody's going to run into you or something. It scares the hell out of me.
Maybe that gets your juices going.
And the car doesn't have any seat belts either.
What, are you worried about getting injured, Jim?
No, yeah, I mean, what else can happen at this point? No. I mean, we've been in a few accidents over the years in these cars. It's happened. I've ridden home on countless tow trucks, flatbeds, we break down, overheat, run out of gas. I mean, let me tell you, it's been an interesting life, driving around during the summer.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. It's obvious you have a passion for cars, and it's a reminder that even though you can't drive the cars, it doesn't mean you can't enjoy them, right? That's what I can say.
Right, exactly. But I've got to get out of some of these older things and get into something newer that's got more reliability, let's put it that way.
Okay. So let's switch gears and talk about your applesauce company. I'm sort of curious to know, how did the idea for starting a company come about, and how did that transpire?
Well, one day I was going down to Northwestern for what I have to obviously go to the doctors a little more than everyone else. And so I was down at the cardiologist, and they couldn't fit me in their room for some reason. So they sent me down to the basement, and I did my treatment down there. And during that time, I was with a lady who started telling me about her barbecue sauce company. You're trying to make I think the procedure was probably a half hour. And so, you chat it up with who's ever with you. And so she told me about that barbecue sauce company, and it intrigued me so much that I came home that very night and started my own food company. And the reason I did that is because, I still want to be a productive member of society. I still want to be, I don't know, maybe I don't want to be forgotten, or I don't know what the term is, but I want to be viable. And so I've been blessed. My mother, Audrey, was like a self-taught chef and used to have dinner parties every weekend. And so I was blessed with having everything homemade when I grew up. And so one of the things that my mother made was applesauce. And so when I went into the refrigerator, there would be an old Miracle Whip or an old Hellman's mayonnaise jar, and that was our applesauce. It wasn't, a store-bought item. And she did that with a lot of different things, not only the applesauce, but dressings and everything else. And so, kind of being the jokester that I am a little bit, we always would sit around and tease Mom around the holiday and say, "Oh, Mom, this is all so amazing. We should bottle it." Well, that's what I did. I said, "Well, I'm going to bottle it." And so I just did it kind of as, a surprise. After that particular procedure, I think the following year I received 40 cases of product. I designed the label. I found a manufacturer, and she gave it to my mom and showed it to everybody and passed it out to everyone. And there's a little store down the street called Happy Foods where my mom shopped. And really, that was my only goal at the time, was to get it on the shelf so she could see it when she shopped. I would just say that was about 14, 15 years ago. So things have really pretty much spiraled from there. And now we're dealing with some pretty big retailers out there. And it's kind of special to see and know where this may go down the road, and if this will be a legacy that I could leave behind for my daughter or something in the future. Who knows?
So was there a breakthrough, like a certain retailer that helped you, get to the next level, or what was it that helped you build the company?
I would just say over the course of all these years, it's been a lot of people that have come and gone from my life or are still friends that have given me a leg up, shall we say. I had a friend whose father worked at Treasure Island. So Treasure Island is a local group of stores here of about 7. And that was like my first big break to get into Treasure Island. I was able to get some product delivered to a famous restaurant here called Hackney's. And I was selling to those guys, and that gave me a lot of credibility. And I mean, David, I used to go out to the manufacturer, pick up the product in my handicap van, come home, put it in the garage, and go out and make deliveries every once in a while. I mean, I've been out there doing it myself, obviously with the assistance of Billy and my nurses and everybody. Everybody helps me out doing it. But I mean, I'm out there. I was out there hustling, man, trying to get this thing off the ground for a while.
So Treasure Island was there toward the very beginning, Hackney's.
Yeah, and so was Jewel. Jewel's been a great partner and a great friend. There was a guy named Jim Seidler who gave me a break, and he heard about my story, and I had written a letter to Jewel, and they gave me an opportunity, and Jewel was really the big break. From there, friends helped me find another manufacturer, so we came up with a bigger unit that was a better value. And now I'm on my third co-packer, and these guys are really phenomenal. I'm thrilled with them, and we've got the best applesauce product on the market today.
So what are some of the other names of the retailers that somebody can find the Mullin's applesauce in? Remember, we have a national program, so...
Well, we have a very large, I would say, regional footprint, but we are expanding. I've picked up some very key accounts lately. So we're moving to the east and southeast in some areas with a company called Food Lion. And I've just also started shipping to Walmart. So we've got a nice footprint with 220 stores with Walmart that'll be coming out through the Midwest. We sell online at mullinfoods.com. We also sell through Amazon. And I just, keep trying one customer at a time and one store at a time. And that's how I got to where I am today.
Yeah, well, it is an amazing story. And one of the things I heard you mentioning before is that it's not all about you making money for yourself, but you're quick to acknowledge that you didn't get to where you are by yourself, and that there's some organizations that you'd like to help benefit from, the success that you've experienced. And I know that one of them, like you said earlier, was the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation. And I'm wondering if there's any others that are the beneficiaries of the success of Mullin's Applesauce Company.
I tend to stay focused. I donate to almost any charity. I try to stay somewhat specific to first responders and veterans charities. But, if there's somebody out there, like right now, we unfortunately, with this situation we just had in Kentucky and these tornadoes, I feel so bad for those people. So if there's something I could do to donate down there or send product or something like that to help those people, I just, that's one thing we are Americans. We all like to help each other. And it's amazing that we just can't get our politics straight because, if it was somebody on the side of the road that was broke down, 90% of us would stop and try to help, and it just seems like, I don't know why idolatry gets in the way of that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, very well spoken. I'm thinking about advice now, and I'm wondering if there's advice you can provide a dad who maybe isn't able to do all the things that he had envisioned for his children or with his spouse. What advice can you offer?
That's a tough question. You do the best. We're all dealt a certain hand, and this happens to be the hand that I'm playing right now. And you have to make the best of it and do the best you can for your family, whether that's financially or emotionally or. For men, I think it's more financial. We want to make sure that they're safe and secure, and if we're not going to be there for them, that they're going to be taken care of. So for me, that's one of my goals, things that I wanted to focus on, to know that there's some sort of safety and security there for them.
That's fabulous. So is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
It feels like right now in the city of Chicago that the Chicago Police Department, it's the father that's out there that's being somewhat absent right now because of the administration. Nobody's disciplining anybody. It's a free-for-all out there right now. And it just is, that's what you're going to get. If you don't have a father in your life to tell you no, or you don't listen to your parents about stealing or drinking or drugs or driving fast and, all the things that they try to, keep you safe from, or, because you're going to get in trouble, you may go to jail. Nobody cares anymore, and it's ridiculous. I don't know how to fix it, but something has to be changed here because this city is going to go into the dumper here pretty soon, the way things are going.
Yeah, well, there is the lack of father involvement, right? The whole idea behind creating the Illinois Fatherhood Initiative and then some of the work that we do with the 21st Century Dads Foundation is to address that issue of father absence. And I think that there is an extra burden placed on the police departments here locally and around the country for that matter, when there's the fracturing of the families, and there's a lot of young men, all different ethnicities, that are growing up in these father absent homes in urban, suburban, and rural communities. And it's really created, challenges that go well beyond what we've experienced in the past. And I don't know that there's a simple solution other than trying to make sure that we strengthen all the families from this point going forward, so there's fewer and fewer of these children, young men and women for that matter, who are experiencing this issue of father absence. Thank you for emphasizing that.
No, I really do appreciate this opportunity. I thank you for letting me promote my applesauce company. I think people will like it. It's really amazing to see how big it's gotten to this point where I may be over 1,000 stores here pretty soon, which is, I'm starting to finally give myself some credit. I'm getting over this Irish Catholic guilt, and I'm starting to say, hey, I guess I'm doing okay. So I feel lucky, and I want to thank everybody who's listened this long, and wish them all the best. And if there's something I can do for somebody out there, I'm always glad to email or talk if I can help.
Yeah, well, I love your spirit, Jim. Thank you. Let's give a special shout out to Phil Klein and our friends at the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation for the great work that they do.
Absolutely.
If somebody wants to learn more about Mullin's Applesauce Company or contact you, what's the best way to do that?
It's just our website, mullinfoods.com. And you can always drop me an email, jim.mullen@mullinfoods.com.
We'll be sure to include that in the show notes so it'll make it as easy as possible for somebody to follow up. Jim, thank you for the time and many insights. As a reminder, Jim is just one of the individuals who's part of the Special Fathers Network, a mentoring program for fathers raising a child with special needs. If you'd like to be a mentor father or are seeking advice from a mentor father with a similar situation to your own, please go to 21stcenturydads.org. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As you probably know, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our content free to all concerned. Would you please consider making a tax-deductible contribution? I would really appreciate your support. Jim, thanks again.
Absolutely, and thank you for all you've done for the Chicago community and your organization as well. It's so needed out there, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks again.
Absolutely.
And thank you for listening to the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children match up with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support other dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we would be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad. Lastly, we're always looking to share interesting stories. If you'd like to share your story or know of a compelling story, please send an email to david@21stcenturydads.org.
The Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast was produced by me, Tom Couch. Thanks again to Horizon Therapeutics, who believe that science and compassion must work together to transform lives. That's why they work tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics at horizontherapeutics.com.